Good morning, everyone. Thank you all for joining us today. As Alan said, I have made a new financial commitment to the Institute, a pledge of $300 million to fund new programs you'll hear more about today as we progress. I've always been fascinated by the workings of the human brain. I'm awed by its enormous complexity. Our brains are many magnitudes more advanced in the way they work than any computer software that has ever been invented. Think about this. We can teach students to program computers in a couple of years of school. But even with a lifetime of learning, at present we are far away from fully understanding the brain. Thus, we have only begun to scratch the surface of the complex problems inherent in figuring out the deep, detailed knowledge of the brain's inner workings. More than a decade ago, I was inspired to try to accelerate brain research by a host of leading scientists, including Jim Watson, the co-discoverer of the double helix structure of DNA. They advised me to develop an accurate and comprehensive map of the brain detailing the expression of every single gene. This would be key to solving basic questions about human behavior, brain disorders, and diseases. It was a call for big science, industrial-scale research. It was clear that we would need the top researchers in the field, as well as large-scale custom technology to capture and process enormous volumes of data. The goal was to spur progress across the entire field, and the best way to ensure that was to allow researchers anywhere in the world to access that data for free. This would set a benchmark for open science, and our findings would be public. We've built that map, and scientists around the world have used our data for a variety of important projects, including research into autism, brain tumors, Alzheimer's, epilepsy, and Down syndrome, to name just a few. Today, the Brain Atlas is used by researchers studying just about every facet of the brain. I'm very proud of the accomplishments Alan and others have been able to share with the world. Alan is a brilliant researcher himself who has put together a top team of scientists, staff, and advisors. Together, they generate, organize, and curate the massive amounts of data that fuel discoveries by the global research community. I also want to take a moment to thank Christoph Koch, the Institute's Chief Scientific Officer, who has just joined us from Caltech. Christoph's world-class talent in the biophysics of the brain and his vision have been key in launching the new initiatives we're announcing today. The Institute's work requires multidisciplinary collaboration. Our team comprises experts from different fields, from genomics and neuroanatomy to engineering, informatics, and computer science. We also work with many universities and other laboratories. These partners bring their own strengths to our joint efforts and will further accelerate our progress. The job gets a lot tougher now. We're going to tackle some of the biggest challenges in science today, as Alan and Christoph will describe in more detail. My commitment today doesn't just continue the work of the Institute, it greatly expands the scale and the scope of our mission. We hope to foment breakthroughs in neuroscience and unlock great unsolved mysteries of how the brain works. To understand this complex organ, we're starting with individual cells to better understand how they develop, integrate information, and make decisions. In parallel, we're going to be studying how collections of brain cells together act to form circuits and how information is input, transformed, and processed in those circuits. And we're going to do it in the open, community-based way that we followed these many years. We're now launching our search for answers to the biggest questions in neuroscience today. We hope those answers will help unlock the principles that drive the fundamental functions of the brain. We are optimistic they will also apply to many diseases and disorders. Our dream is to one day uncover the essence of what makes us human, to explore and understand how the brain makes us remember, forget, interact with each other, and become the people we are. Thank you again for coming today and to share this exciting news with us.
take a question from the telephone. The Wall Street Journal, go ahead.
Yes, this is Lee Holtz at the Wall Street Journal. A question for Paul Allen, if I may. Sir, I wonder if you'd help us understand your philanthropic impulse a little better here. You have a great many different activities, a great many interests. You funded many of them with foundation grants. Yet, in the area of basic neuroscience research, you've now donated to $500 million. It's an extraordinary commitment. I appreciate your opening remarks, but I'd like to better understand why neuroscience, why this particular field.
Well, as I said in my speech, I've always been fascinated by the brain. If you start out as a programmer, I did, in high school, the brain works in a completely unknown and different fashion than computers do, and it's amazingly complex. So there is really no greater challenge with potentially huge impact than understanding how brains work. So for me it's both fascinating and as someone who's also been touched by the impact of neurodegenerative diseases. My mother has Alzheimer's, for example. I want to see cures of those things brought forward for the benefit of everybody. So it's both a fascination with the basic research and science and the hope that we develop things that help bring forward these potential cures of diseases.
Telephone, New York Times, go ahead.
This is Ben Carey, New York Times. I have a question for Paul Allen as well. So I wonder if this is 10 years now, and you had your reasons you've just described there. I wonder, and it's an investment, even though it's a philanthropic one. It's an investment like some others. If there were things you were hoping for, a decade ago, sort of low-hanging fruit, a breakthrough or a break, at least in understanding any particular disorder. It's one thing to build tools, and another whether those tools help to actually, crack one of these problems.
Well, I think if you look, and we've provided succeeded in our original mission, provided a fantastic resource for researchers globally to delve into all these different areas. But progress in science and all these things is helped along by these resources and helped along by many people's philanthropic investments and funding from the government and so forth. And I think we are starting to see some progress in these different areas. But now we decided to tackle the most fundamental, challenging problems that exist in neuroscience. And this is a very, very ambitious goal, and it's going to keep us well occupied for the next 10 years and probably longer. We hope to see the same kind of results in this fundamental research in function and cell function and circuits and coding in the brain that we've seen in terms of generating data. I guess I would add that if you look at anything from whether it's cancer to Alzheimer's to any of these interesting disease treatment questions or the fundamental working of the brain, these are extraordinary complex systems that you're trying to decipher and be able to manipulate and understand. And so there's what I call they're so complex that there's what I call the complexity break that holds you back from just thinking you're going to apply some technology in a few years have a result. It's a lot of hard work. It's going to take the best minds and efforts of all of our staff to try to accelerate that progress. But I'm very excited what we've done so far, but now we're going to tackle even tougher problems.
This is Luke Timmerman with Xconomy. This is a question for Paul. Was there a particular milestone or moment in the last couple of years that the existing team achieved that gave you the confidence to make this big of a commitment for the next 10 years? Well,
I think we've achieved quite a number of milestones in terms of the database on the mouse brain, the spinal cord, developing mouse, and now we're on human brain number 6 or 7.
Getting there.
Okay.
This year will be 6.
Okay, yeah. 6. So we've been able to meet the milestones in terms of providing data, but now I mean, Christoph could probably explain better than I can, but we're tackling fundamental science. So it's not just about looking and providing a database of the genetics of individual cells. Now we're trying to figure out how this whole system works together, which is amazingly complex and challenging. So we're actually ramping up our ambitions in a very significant way with this next step.
Hi, this is Valerie Bauman with the Puget Sound Business Journal. And Mr. Allen, you had touched on keeping information and research open for the larger scientific community. I'm curious if at any point you guys are going to look into intellectual property and commercialization of any of the research that you are doing here.
That's not something I'm focused on now. This whole initiative is about trying to push the boundaries of what we know about the brain and using the same kind of methodology we have been using to disseminate that information and our external collaborations, whether it's with NIH-funded groups or universities, has been great, and it's going to continue. So that really all gains so much more momentum if you take the kind of open approach we have, and that's why there's so many people using our database online right now, and why we're getting so much uptake of the information we've already produced.
If we can go back to the motive question a little bit, the Journal and the New York Times asked you, it's interesting the parallels with your interest in science fiction and exploring space and observatories. Was there a particular book or point at which you became real interested in exploring the brain as well?
I can't point to any particular book as such. I mean, obviously in science fiction there's the idea of artificial intelligences, and to me we're so far from that, because you can't create an artificial intelligence unless you understand how the real thing works, and we are so far from that. And so this is a hugely challenging area, and it cries out for this kind of industrial scale attempts to decode parts of it, and so we're embarking on that trip now. So there's probably some influence there, but I guess that's what I would say about that.
Blade Runner?
Blade Runner. There was I love Blade Runner, by the way, but those androids were kind of pesky, actually. There was a book called Final Encyclopedia that had all of human knowledge in a computer. But I mean, we're so far from inventing intelligent machines, and we're so far from understanding the brain. So, I think both those things are fascinating and challenging. And I've always been fascinated by both questions. Well, we have done some specific work with philanthropic groups on things like autism and so forth, and sleep disorders, right? So we have done those kinds of specific things. But just to try to recharacterize it one more time, we're doing basic research here. This is basic research about how the building blocks work and interact with each other, and hopefully that will have implications of disease. But we're not starting by looking at particular disease states or something like that. Would you agree with that, Christoph?
Yes.
I'm wondering how long you think it'll take to accomplish your goal. It's been described somewhere it was a 10-year project, and I saw that the funding, your initial funding, Paul, was for 4 years or something. So what happens? It's
expensive.
Yeah. So what happens after 4 years, and how long do you think it'll take?
Well, after 4 years, I mean, we're going to look at how far we've gotten in the different areas, and what's going to require more funding, or scaling up, or scaling down, or refocusing. So we have very ambitious goals for the next 4 years, and then we'll fine tune and see what course changes we want to make after that. But there's no shortage of challenge here. This is going to be a long, ongoing project. We're still discovering additional levels of complexity. We're going to try to unearth additional levels of complexity. We're probably going to see a lot more when we get down these details. Every time you look at a more detailed level, you see more complexity, But then the goal is to extract the organizing principles from that complexity so you can figure out how everything works together. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks.